Welcome back, Bare Facts. I know I always sound like Richie Benno when I say that. It's been a little while. The theme is still the same. We're talking to extraordinary/interesting people. And with me today, I have two interesting and I think extraordinary people because of what they've achieved with their company. They're called the Royals. They're an advertising company. They're one of Australia's leading advertising agencies. Very, very creative, as you would be with an advertising agency, but very innovative. The two founders and owners are Steve O'Farrell and Andrew Siwka. Thanks for joining us today, guys.
Thank you, Ross.
Yeah, thanks, Ross.
Good to be here.
All right, which one am I going to start with?
Whichever you like.
I go Steve.
The other person will probably talk over the top anyway, so flip a coin.
He's much more interesting and extraordinary.
Steve, give me your path into advertising, your background, how you found yourself in advertising.
Was that me or Andrew? Sorry, mate.
Steve.
Okay. My background into advertising was I did neurophysiology and pharmacology at uni with a minor in music. And the only thing I knew when I graduated was that I didn't want to end up in a lab, and I wasn't good enough to earn a decent full-time salary anyway as a musician. And I'll never forget being handed a flyer in those days at Monash Uni, which is where I was doing science, that said, "We want scientists who don't want to be scientists," by a mate of mine. He said, "This sounds like you." And it was an advertisement for the DDB Needham graduate internship back in the early 90s, or mid-90s, I should say. And I applied. And the more I learnt about the industry, the people that worked in it, the fun you could have, the creativity as it applied to business problems, the more I got into it and was lucky enough to be accepted and then went from there.
How about you, Andrew? How did you find your way into the advertising industry?
Like many things between Steve-O and I, they have a weird connection. I was also a scientist, marine biologist, with a minor in philosophy, and I also didn't like the idea of working in a lab for the rest of my life. Was passionate about the sea. The prospect of either working in a lab or looking through a glass bottom boat for the rest of my life was not something I wanted to do. So again, I also had someone that sort of effectively told me about this advertising malarkey and said, "This could be for you." And a bit the same. I applied for an internship and did some work experience, and that's how I started as well. Kind of 2 weeks worth of work experience ended up as the next 8 years of my life. So I sort of fell into it of sorts, but quickly worked out that I loved so much of it. It was sort of the thing that I was looking for that I didn't know that existed.
Is this unusual? Like, I know that we all have different career changes, but is this unusual for two science-heavy people to then go into a very creative industry?
I think that I think one of the wonderful things about advertising is that it needs a diverse. The diversity is key. So as a result, different perspectives on the world, understanding of different audiences, different need sets, etc. And so I think kind of we definitely look for people who come from different backgrounds, not all kind of cookie cutter out of RMIT advertising school. I think kind of one of the things that I do apply from science, and I know Steve-O does as well, is this sense of a strategic rigor. That sets the platform for great creativity. I don't think it's just kind of go into a room with some markers and a whiteboard and suddenly come out with some ideas. I think there is a process and a rigor to it, and I think kind of that sets the platform for we talk about the freedom of a tight brief, and I think that's what sort of that scientific background gives to me is a little bit of that.
Steve, how did the Royals come about? How did you and Andrew brew this company and get it going? I believe it was 20 years ago now.
Not quite 20. I think closer to 12 or 13, but the way it came about, so Andrew and I were working and really got brought together by a parent company that was headquartered out of the States. And pretty soon into that relationship, we realized two things. Number one, we didn't want to work with that company anymore because it was rotten, to the extent where a couple of the executives ended up serving some time in jail. And the second was that we really appreciated each other's values and the way that we went about our work. And so when a lot of the shit was kind of floating to the surface with that parent company, I said to Andrew, I'm out. And do you want to come with? And so we started, that was kind of some of the earlier conversations, having worked and established our, and finding in the hardest possible circumstances all about each other. We started the Royals back in kind of 2011, and I resigned 3 months. Andrew took over after I did, subsequently resigned, and we joined up with one of our co-founders, Dave King, in Chapel Street in a tiny little office back in 2011 and built it from there.
Andrew, how stressful is it financially when you start out a business like that? You both go from being payees to business owners. Because I know that myself, having been a payee, you look at businesses with envy and think, oh, wow, the sky's the limit. But it doesn't start like that, does it? How hard is it to stay creative and innovative when you have financial considerations?
It's definitely difficult. I'm not so sure it limits the creativity. I think it probably, that sense of being shit scared kind of probably helps you keep a bit focused at times. But it was definitely difficult. I mean, we didn't pay ourselves for the first year, so you effectively and had to put money into the business to start it. So, you're drawing down on your mortgage and extending that and putting yourself under those sorts of pressures. So most definitely, it's if I liken starting a business to, if you think about it too much, you would never do it. So if you overthink it, you'll easily talk yourself out of it because it makes not a lot of rational sense. At the time, you're driven by, I think, more of an emotional kind of requirement. And certainly for me, that was what a massive driver of it. It was something that I always wanted to have tried, and this was, my trade was in advertising. So as a result, the idea of starting an advertising agency felt like a natural next step. But it's definitely difficult, but the rewards are definitely there in terms of at times a sense of control. There are times where you feel out of control also, and you can't just run away and hide. You've got to kind of front up to that because the buck stops with you. But definitely that first year was built on adrenaline. We also, between the two of us, had 6 kids since we started the business. So it's kind of like there was also there's the financial strain, but also kind of starting a business with 6 young kids. It's kind of it's not just us that bear the brunt of that. Whilst we're the front people for the business between us and our wives Alex and Kate. I mean they're part of this business, and also in terms of what they contributed in those early days to kind of shield us from some of those requirements was certainly was a big part of starting it.
So Steve, just on what Andrew was saying, you'd agree there that you have to do a little bit of the how, but it's more about looking at the end piece and believing in that and almost manifesting it and getting into this is what you're going to do, almost getting it into your subconscious, the idea, and just moving towards it.
Yeah, I think that's right, Ross. And I think, there's a couple of things to what Andrew's saying. Number one, there's plenty of incentive and motivation not to stuff it up when there's a fair bit riding on it. But you've also got to be in it for the right reasons. So I don't think anyone works in advertising, quite frankly, for the money. You work in it because you're passionate about working in a creative industry, solving some really complex business problems, building relationships with people, building something that you can be proud of, creating a culture that people can be proud to be a part of. And that's all part of the long-term vision that you set for the agency. But, this is a journey, and you can't look at anything in too short a time frame. We've had so many sidewards and indeed sort of backwards steps through this journey, but keep coming back to why we started in the first place, being true to our values and the type of place that we want to create, and having faith in each other and the team around us, to continue to build and grow in the way that we envisage. So, I think, yes, it's important to have a vision. Yes, it's important to have some guiding principles to help you achieve that vision, but also focus on the stuff that you control in the here and now and not worry too much if things go wrong, because that's going to happen plenty along the journey.
I've been into your office. It's a very interesting environment, a very nice environment. Andrew, how important is that, particularly for the staff and to keep everyone motivated?
Massively. Like the space that you've seen, Ross, is where we've been since month 4. And as you attest to, it's a massive space. And when we first moved in here, there was 5 of us, and it's 1,000 square meters. So it's a pretty big space. But it really feels like us. We've been here for 13 years. We've built much of what you see with ourselves. Like literally in the early days, we were building those desks that you saw in here. And it's expanded very organically as we have. And I think that it does feel like us and authentically us. And I think that's important, particularly at the moment since COVID and the way that the office space and the requirements of an office space have changed. There's no longer a requirement for people to come in because you don't trust that they're doing work. Yeah, that's gone. I think we all trust that people can get a job done. We're in most instances, regardless of where they are. But as a creative industry, we require people to be together because we get to better creative outcomes, like people bouncing ideas off each other and being able to build on ideas together is an important part of the creative process. And we've seen that not just in advertising, but in most creative pursuits, where communities of artists come together because it enhances the creative process. And this is a microcosm of that. So creating a space where people want to come and feel like they can be their natural selves and also kind of enables the creative process to be at its best, that's really important to us. And so we've designed it around that. And that's probably changed a little bit since COVID, in that we have tried to, design both the space, but also the way we operate to maximize that time together. We're now, together 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays in the office as mandatory days. And we've tried to restructure our week so that it maximizes the time together, the tasks that we do best together, try to focus on those 3 days.
Steve, on that, do you both think that people are more productive if you give them a bit more leeway like that, in that you say, okay, well, there's 3 days we'd like you in the office, but if they're left to their own accord and can structure those other days how they want to, they're just as productive, if not more productive?
Yeah, I do. I think it's just the working reality of the modern day, to be honest, Ross. And also, we talk a lot about creative sustainability, and a lot of that creativity isn't necessarily going to come between the hours of 9 to 5 when you're sitting at 105 Dover Street. So between the sustainability of what we do, understanding and flexing around family, which, Andrew mentioned the 6 kids between us. We've had lots of royals have baby royals as well over the years. It's just one of the most rewarding, parts of life, and let alone, for us to be part of that journey as well. So trying to create a culture that is conducive to all of that and embraces it rather than pushing it away, particularly with what we do, being a creatively driven industry, is so aligned with, sustainable innovation and creativity, and very deliberately so. Having fun in this space, we've had some of the best parties of our lives at 105 Dover Street, including the avalanches downstairs in the car park. Like, you don't get that in too many workspaces, but, it continues to be, some of the key moments in the Royals journey that, we look back on fondly. So yes, culture and the space that we work in is a key part of that.
Yeah, we're an industry renowned for burnout. Like, it's for kind of on both the types of people that creative people that come in here have probably a propensity for a high propensity for burnout. But I think also the way that agencies kind of operate and their processes also at times plays off that a bit. And I think kind of there's a lot of issues as a result of that. And we were very deliberate about trying to find ways to minimize that. And as Sivo said, the sustainability angle was one of our the pillars of what we were trying to achieve. Like, how do we get to great creative outcomes that aren't at the expense of our people? And that's a work in progress. I think kind of we're always trying to tweak that to get to the amazing outcomes, but without leaving kind of creative carcasses on the road to getting there is really important for us.
You guys are known as leaders for your wellness with your staff. Do you think more people in the industry are catching on to that because you say there is a propensity for creatives to burn out in this industry?
Yeah, I certainly hope so, because we take a huge amount of pride in our sort of cultural track record and the fact that we're probably the most awarded agency in the country for people and culture over the course of the last decade. And, that comes from a couple of different factors, I think, a couple of major factors, I think. Number one, very deliberate planning with some very capable people like Andrew leading our cultural efforts and Christy sustaining things from a people and culture point of view overall. It also comes from going through some really challenging times ourselves. And, we mentioned 6 kids between us it was over the course of about 8 or 9 years while building a business. I had 2 of those kids overseas via surrogate. So it was a pretty complex process. And you get pretty bloody good at managing your own stress levels and having a kind of go-to quiver for sustainability of your own well-being as a result of going through processes like that. So, it's the cultural piece, but it's also and the planning side of things with the right people, but it's also a byproduct of ourselves being, I'd like to think, somewhat self-aware in terms of what works well for us, what doesn't, and why.
Well,
Andrew,
certainly counselling has made me more aware.
Yeah, that too.
Andrew,
that could be an interesting one to talk about. Ross, you might want to hear more about that. Go talk about the marriage counselling, Andrew, not your own marriage counselling, but our marriage counselling.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. I like to compartmentalize various forms of counselling, but definitely from a business point of view, since inception we started with a group psychologist that has worked with the partnership group and then subsequently moved into helping the management team with how we operate together. So we would spend, once a quarter, we'd meet, and for 4 hours we'd work through. It was a big, solid session. You'd come out of there exhausted. Yeah. You'd certainly have to psych yourself up for it. Some days it was you weren't quite ready for it, but you put yourself through it. And I think kind of there's no doubt that this partnership would not be together if it wasn't for our marriage counsellor, Simon Brown, who still works with us to this day.
Did he help you guys step through the fact that you both live relatively close to each other and
there is some
shared primary schools?
No, we live close to each other. Our wives grew up in the same street in Adelaide. We both have science degrees. We both go to the same hairdresser. And Steve-O's taking his glasses off to try and minimise the weirdness. But
there's a lot to unpick in all that, Ross.
Yeah,
a lot to unpick.
And we live 150 metres from each other. But
he's an invaluable resource that we go to regularly. when we have new members or new team members join the management team, we've got a new partner coming into the business shortly. Having that, point of counsel to be able to help us manage through the ups and downs in a very personalised and deliberate way is something that, as Andrew said, has been integral to our sustainability over the course of the last 12 or 13 years, for sure.
What about how important is fitness to you both? I know that's a loaded question, and I know that you are both into it. How important is that to you for your business and your mindset?
Well, I like to think it helps save me a lot of money on a lot of other counselling sessions. So I choose to spend my money on a gym membership instead.
Yeah.
Oh, look, I discovered a long time ago, Ross, that the physical activity and well-being was absolutely critical to my life well-being. And I think, I'm constantly learning, which is awesome. I was very fortunate that I was shown the way there with two pretty healthy parents that kind of set a great example for me as a kid. I still fondly remember running around, the Elwood Canal and doing exercises with my dad in the kind of late 70s, as he was kind of at my stage of life. So I learnt early on, particularly in a highly pressured industry like advertising, where you're constantly on client deadlines. There's challenging conversations to be had. There's presentations to be made. There's pitches to be rolled out. Before you even get to the fact that we're business owners that are responsible not just for our family's own livelihoods, but the livelihoods for our employees as well. I learned very early on that my mental well-being is best when I'm physically fit as well, and I focus on that literally every day. It's just a part of how I live.
Andrew, you've seen running and riding.
I can't live without it, Ross. It's as Steve said, I can't live without it. Well, I can live without it. It's life isn't quite as good in a broader sense. It kind of grounds me in so many ways, provides me with kind of a bit of silence in my head at times where I kind of get time to work stuff out. When things I'm confused, I find things become less confused when I'm riding my bike or running somewhere. Both of those things provide me with a great degree of clarity of thought, but also just kind of physically, I need that to as part of myself, and I've gotten a real good understanding of that. And at times that slips, and then you quickly kind of reset, and sometimes not so quickly, but you realize that why am I feeling this way, and go back to some of the fundamentals, which are what do I normally do and am I not doing when I feel this way? And it's not just exercise. It's kind of trying to do some breathing or some form of meditation, or drinking less booze, whatever it happens to be. All the things that kind of make you feel less good. You go back to that checklist and make sure you're doing those to a certain degree. And exercise is one of my checklists that I need to make sure I'm doing to a degree. I have my nature is I tend to do them to a little bit of extreme, and one of my learnings has been to try and not do that, to the detriment of other things. Because whilst exercise can, is a necessary part of that, I tend to click into more mode with that, and that can, with a family and a business and other pressures, that can tend to overwhelm that as well. So I've got to keep that in check as well. It's not, you can have too much of it. I find I can actually have too much of it too.
The only thing he doesn't want more of, Ross, which I'm encouraging you to do, is the cold water therapy, mate, is the thing that we're working on. So he might see the light one day and end up doing the ice mile. Who knows?
Well, there's an ice bath here anytime. He lives very close to the bay as well. Anytime.
Well, I don't think I can tell you any more times that I'm going to be there tomorrow and not show up. So I probably need to actually just do it rather than promise to do it.
So speaking of not showing up, on a serious note, do you guys consciously try and keep a space from each other in your private lives because you do live close to each other? Just, I don't know, just to give each other a break, or?
I remember seeing a presentation, Michael Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz, I saw speak at a South by Southwest event a bunch of years ago. And he got asked about Horowitz, his co-founder, and said, do you guys much spend a heap of time together? Like, how much time do you see of each other outside of work? And Andreessen's response was, I don't want to spend any more time with him outside of work. And I remember thinking at the time, like, shit, that sounded like a really harsh thing to say. But at the same time, I get it. And I can say that openly to Andrew. Like, I get it. Having said that, we're also really fortunate that not only do we share wives who are very close to each other, kids who go to the same school together, we've actually got an extended friendship network that we share as well. And I think that's a great thing. Like, I actually think that's a wonderful thing, because we can go out and have fun together and not talk too much about, clients or day-to-day work or balance sheets or any of that stuff. We can just go out and remind each other how fun it is to hang out together. So I can see how people would say that. It's not so much of a factor for us, but we're also, I think, cognizant of giving each other the space we need as well. I know you're close to me outside of work, Andrew. I don't know whether you want to.
Yeah, you keep pushing me away, but but which again, back to counselling, I'm getting better at, and
the ice bath fits 2 at a time.
Yeah, apparently verbalising that is part of the process.
2 at a time on an ice bath.
But I echo that. I mean, we have similar personal passions and interests, and as a natural consequence, we're kind of friends and have lots of mutual friends. I think we, we're also cognizant of, we don't have to see each other every Friday night either, but when we do, it's awesome. So that's fine by us. I think we got that balance pretty right.
Can you guys tell me a little bit more about the mottos you have, or the motto that you have within your company about you're always continually learning? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I think what you're referring to is our most interested philosophy, Ross. Yeah, which is grounded in the idea and the premise that you've got to be interested before you can expect to be interesting. And for us, that's not just like a work philosophy. It's a philosophy really for life, I think. And how that plays out, from a staffing point of view, is it's all about cultivating curiosity in people. And let's be honest, like, some people are more inherently curious than others, but the ones who are most curious are the best, make the best royals. And we apply that inherent curiosity to everything that we do every day. And for the best of us, that's not just in a work context, but it's in our personal lives as well. It has huge benefits for clients in terms of taking inspiration from all sorts of sources. It has huge benefits from an efficiencies point of view in using emerging technologies and tool sets for the betterment of the work that we produce. And it has huge rewards overall, because it's a philosophy that you can carry with yourself. As I said, this philosophy of lifelong learning is something that, I hope I hold on to, or I plan on holding on to forever. So that's the philosophy that we've built our business around and continue to have as our kind of organizational and life perspective every day.
Yeah, it's hard to switch it off, right? Yeah. It's not like something you kind of go. I'm most interested when I'm at work, but I don't do that at home. It's kind of you either got it or you don't. You're the sort of guy or girl at a barbecue that asks other people lots of questions, not talking a lot about yourself.
Is that you?
Yeah, although I probably do a little bit of that. Right. But anyway, there's room for improvement in everybody. So as a result, some more than others, me probably more than most. But I think kind of that's definitely in, and I think that, as Siwka said, those people come armed with so much more, that information, insight, interestingness already come armed with that from them. They don't then go and switch on at 9 o'clock and go, okay, I've got to learn some things that I might be useful. It's kind of like they're applying that knowledge, not gaining that knowledge, if you know what I mean. So that the application that shortcuts the whole process, which is really required these days, and the speed with which we move. If you kind of have to take a week to get up to speed on something before you're actually able to apply that knowledge, the world's passed you by.
Andrew, how many clients would you guys be juggling at any one stage?
Well, between the two of us, we sort of trying to divide up the clients between us to kind of share that load.
Yeah.
So, I think you could say that we've got 15 clients at any given time that we're juggling it. They might not all be on in any given week, but in any given quarter, they certainly would be, with massive overlap between it. And that's one of the juggles that we have as our business, is trying to actually manage a really unpredictable workload.
We appear to have lost Steve for a moment.
I'm just going to get a powered cord, Ross, because my computer's about to run out of battery.
Thankfully, there's an editor, so as a result, we're all good.
No, this is just going to add some character to it. Andrew, you guys have done some work with Qantas, is that correct?
Jetstar mainly. We did a lot of work with Jetstar. We kind of did some work, strategic work for Qantas back in the day, but yeah, we were involved with Jetstar for quite some time.
And how was that dealing with an airline?
That was super interesting. I think kind of the thing I found most interesting about that was working with a low-cost airline. It was fascinating by much of their job was about expectation management. So they're a low-cost airline owned by Qantas, which is obviously a premium kind of offering. Yeah. And so as a result, trying to manage the difference in expectations between two offerings within the same parent company that do things very differently. Yeah. So, people would expect the service offering that you got from
cleaners in early
Qantas, correct? If only. That you get from Qantas with Jetstar, and you go, well, you only paid $30 for that airfare. Like there's a higher chance of it being delayed, or you're not getting the seat that you wanted, or the fact that you didn't get a meal, etc. when you only pay $30 for an airfare. And I think kind of much of our job around the brand with Jetstar was, in the nicest possible way, reminding people of that, whilst kind of still upholding ourselves to a degree, a level of service that was appropriate.
Do you guys ever have writer's block, creative block?
Yep, pretty regularly, to be honest. Thankfully, the degree of writing that we do can be well distributed amongst some people far more capable than we are at that craft. But again, I think I've learned anyway, to be able to deal with that fairly effectively, and with, some cheats and hacks that allow me to take the right sort of break and come back to things at the right point in time. What exactly that involves or entails, it can vary a lot, but absolutely. And it's not just writing. It can be, the need to reflect more effectively on, people problems, or, strategic considerations for, a particular element of your business that you want to focus on. Really depends on the nature of the problem itself. But fortunately, if it's specifically writing, there's people who can pick up that baton and run with it, and then hand it back to us at the right point in time if it becomes an issue.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think coming back to that, the reference to the requirement for fitness, I think there's the blocks that Steve was referring to beyond writer's block is, emotional block, where you don't respond to something in the right sorts of ways. You're tired, you're run down, you're not feeling great, and sometimes you respond in ways that you're not particularly proud of. And I think kind of big part of what we've been through is getting better at recognizing that within ourselves, and also, each other, to be able to highlight that in the right sort of way that doesn't inflame the situation, that probably, serves as checks and balances of, holy shit, yeah, probably didn't respond to that in the right sort of ways, what's going on for you right now, rather than kind of, how dare you talk to me like that, is probably, sort of responses that we've gotten better at, over time, understanding what normal is like. You get over many years, you then understand what not normal is like. And kind of start searching for reasons, because that's not how one operates normally. So trying to have some empathy for that, and creating some space, and realizing that we're not all perfect is a big part of what I've certainly learnt, and as part of this partnership, for sure. And then apply that same learning into our own personal relationships in so many ways.
Where are you guys heading? Where's the company heading to at the moment? Expanding, changing? What's going on at the moment?
I think we're in the roller coaster of a business. It definitely feels like we're heading up. We're certainly feeling like, we're talking about this whole premise of Royals 3.0. We've got a new creative leader coming into our business. We've got we're certainly feeling kind of re-energized, and talk about that feeling of that being quite palpable at the moment, which is awesome to feel. Energized, focused, new people. It feels like a great place to be right now, and that's not always the case. I mean, you go through, in 13 years, you go through various moments in time where you lose a particular client, or you don't win a pitch, or you have some people leave, or you come up against a virus that gets let out in some weird part of the world that you have to respond to. So there's always challenges along the way. So it's not always been at its most awesome. But this definitely feels like a period where the momentum is heading our way, has for a little while now, and feels like it's building. So that's a great feeling.
I think the emphasis for us, Ross, as part of that growth story as well, will just be a focus on productivity and efficiency. So we've got such a wonderful group of people with an ever increasing, expanding kind of knowledge base as it relates to using AI and related tools to help them in their roles, that will allow us to improve our collective productivity, exponentially over the course of the next several years. So when we say growth, yes, we've been fantastically fortunate to have some outstanding client growth over the course of the last 6 or 12 months. And we've got some great people who are delivering for those clients, but the hope is that we'll be able to improve our productivity and the quality of that output even more so as a result of some of these new and emerging technologies that we're looking to integrate into our workflows and our processes every single day. So, and that's, speaking of most interested process, it's bloody fascinating to be learning every day to see what those types of tools are capable of, and really gives kind of us a whole new mission and a whole new way of working as a result, which is super fun.
So you guys, with your learning motto, you don't see things like AI as killing off parts of your industry. You see it as enhancing it.
It's certainly changing it a lot. I wouldn't use the word killing off. I'd say it's just redistributing things. And for the core of what we do in terms of using creativity in really interesting ways to help solve some pretty complex problems, I think if anything, it'll be able to sort the wheat from the chaff, and the more creative thinkers who don't come back to algorithms for standardized answers to questions, no matter how good your prompt sequence might be, aren't going to be as rewarded as the people who continue to think laterally, and, to be honest, can leverage those tools in more creative ways for the benefit of what they do. So no, it's not going to kill us off. It'll change it significantly. It already is. Hopefully, our plan is to establish ourselves and set ourselves up for success in terms of productivity and improving the quality of our creative product and the process.
Yeah, I definitely see it as a supercharger, for sure. I mean, I echo the change bit, but when when harnessed in the right ways, it supercharges our business, doesn't kill it. So it's just a matter of making sure you understand how to best use that kind of, man and machine beats machine, and man and machine beats man. So let's harness that for the betterment of as we say, both the quantity and quality of our output.
Just a final one from both of you, Andrew. What's a tip for someone that would be interested in getting into the creative advertising industry? What should they be doing, thinking, learning?
Doing marine science with a philosophy minor. No, more seriously, I think really understanding what it is. I think kind of people use this word creativity a lot, but I think kind of really understanding what it is that you want to do with that. And advertising is one avenue for creativity. It's a commercial application of that creativity, no doubt, and really understanding that is key, I think. So doing the homework on yourself, what you're looking for, if that's what you're interested in, exactly what is it that you're interested in. So ask lots of questions, meet lots of people, be interested in what you're trying to understand, and I think with that better understanding of that, you're able to then find the areas that are most applicable to what you are good at and what you want to do.
Steve?
I mean, that's from a capabilities point of view, I guess. That the other thing just to note, and particularly, given the challenging business environment that we find ourselves in, I would just say don't give up. Like, it's almost a bit like, I remember when I was learning to kite surf, and I must have been down at that beach 20 or 30 times before I could figure out how to stand up on a board and get going and have some fun with this, new emerging passion that I had. And I get into our industry might be a bit the same in terms of you just got to be resilient and keep showing up and giving it a crack. And once you're in, it'll be the most fun that you can possibly have in business. And for us anyway, obviously, we don't want to get out of it. But just make sure you keep turning up. Don't take no for an answer. Get as much practice time with businesses as you possibly can, and that'll be the way that you can finally break into the industry that needs more good people than ever.
Guys, how competitive is it to get into the industry, say into a company like yours at the moment?
Oh, look, it depends what level you're talking about, Ross. Obviously, we're fortunate that we've just found a new creative partner who is outstanding. We've ended up, recruiting them from overseas. But at the entry level, for whatever reason, and this is just my opinion, I feel like, relatively speaking, I remember when I applied when I was talking about in the early 90s, there would have been hundreds of applications for those graduate traineeships. And I honestly just don't think that that's the case anymore. It's still difficult. It's still highly competitive because there's just not that many places that are going. But, advertising, I think, is probably coming a distant second, or a distant last, maybe second last, to a number of different industries in terms of people who want to apply their learnings through, when they step out of uni. So I think there's probably less positions than there once was. I think there's certainly a lot of young, passionate university crew who we work with closely that are chomping at the bit to get into it compared to what it used to be like. I think the demand is probably a bit less, but then so are the number of people who are looking to enter the industry as well.
Andrew, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's true. There's been a bit of a credibility issue with the industry. I've seen, having worked overseas, I think kind of it's held in probably higher regard overseas in terms of how the options, medicine, law, and advertising kind of don't sit on the same. They're not kind of sit on the same plane here in Australia. Whereas I might be overstating it, but in the UK and the US, they're certainly not as dramatically different levels as they are here. I think it's kind of seen as being kind of a bit of a creative pursuit as opposed to being necessarily a business or commercial one. But I think that is changing, and I think we've got a job to do and a responsibility to ensure that's the case, so that the people who get into the industry are smarter, brighter, more ambitious, and as a result, by natural consequence, the competitive nature of it, the better the people come in, and it builds from there.
Andrew and Steve, I'd like to thank you both for joining the Bearfacts today. It's really great to talk to an organisation that is not only creative, but values its staff and what it does. And for those that are listening and those that will be watching, it's a really great example, I think, to have a non-toxic and a really inspirational culture for people to work within. Certainly, we spend a long time in the workforce, and places like yours are certainly great places to work. So thanks for joining us and letting us know a little bit about the Royals today.
Pleasure, Ross.
Yeah, thank you, Ross.
Good on you, mate. Good to see you.